We were finishing our popcorn just as the credits started to roll when the man in the lobby asked me about my car. I'm Tobias. I'm a locksmith. My wife Renata and I had driven down from the suburbs to the big theater on the south side of Denver to see a late showing of a horror film we'd been waiting on for months. Friday night, 11:30 start. Out around 2 in the morning. The kind of date night we used to do every couple weeks before our daughter was born, and only do now, very deliberately, when we can find a sitter. When we walked out of the auditorium into the lobby, the place was quiet. The concession stand was closed. One employee was running a mop. A few groups of people were drifting toward the exit. A man was standing near the side door that led to the parking garage. He was, I would say, mid-40s. White hoodie, jeans, empty hands. He had no ticket in his hand and no popcorn bag and no concessions cup. He was just standing there. He nodded at us as we approached. We nodded back, the way you do. He said, "Hey, real quick, that gray Tacoma in the garage, that's you guys, right? I want you to picture this. We were maybe 8 steps from where he was standing. He was not in our path. He had no obvious reason to be talking to us. He had described our truck. I am a locksmith. I think about cars more than the average person. The first thing my brain did was fast, walk back through the parking garage and try to remember where we had parked. We had parked on level 2. We had used the south stairwell. The Tacoma was in fact gray. The second thing my brain did, honestly, was the part I am proud of looking back because it was fast. I said, nope, we're in a black sedan. He looked at me. He looked at Renata. He said, "Oh, sorry. Thought I saw you guys come in." He turned and walked slowly out the side door. Renata's hand came down on my arm. I told her, very quietly, "Don't react. Don't look. Walk to the box office." We walked to the box office at the front of the lobby. The window was closed. There was a phone hanging next to it with a sign that said, "Employees only." I picked it up. It rang somewhere. A woman answered. I told her I was a guest. I was at the box office. There was a man in the lobby who had just falsely claimed to know what car I drove. And could she please send security to walk us to our vehicle? She said, "Hold on." She came back. She said, "Security's on the way. Please wait inside." 2 security guards walked us out. We took the elevator instead of the stairs. The garage was mostly empty by then. When we got to our truck, the driver's side door handle had a thin scuff mark along the lip of the door, the kind you get from the edge of a Slim Jim or a wedge if someone has been trying to slide a tool in to manipulate the lock. I looked at the security guard. I showed him the scuff. He took out his radio. He said something into it. The garage cameras went live on his handheld. I asked him what they thought had happened. He said, "Best guess. He saw you walk in. He went to the garage. He worked the car. He came back to the lobby to confirm which one was yours. By asking you. If you'd confirmed, he'd have known he had the right vehicle and been able to finish." I asked him what he meant by finish. He said, "Either steal it after you drove off with a tracker, or wait, watch you put something in the trunk on the way out and break in for the contents." We did not drive the truck home that night. We left it parked in the garage. We Ubered home. I came back the next morning with a tow service and had it brought to a friend's shop. We swept the truck for trackers. We found one. It was attached to the rear fender well with a magnet. Cheap. Disposable. About $40 at a hardware store. The Denver Police Department's auto theft unit was already by then working a pattern. The man at the lobby was, they later told us, the 3rd reported sighting of a person matching his description at a multiplex parking garage in the metro area in the previous 2 months. 2 prior incidents had ended differently. In the first, the victim had answered the lobby question with, "Yes, that's me." Her vehicle was stolen from her driveway 11 days later. In the second, the victim had also said yes, but had been waiting for the bus the next morning when an unfamiliar man approached her and asked her for the keys. The unfamiliar man in the second case had a knife in his pocket. I think about the question in the lobby a lot. I mean, we did not have a stranger watching us all night. We had a stranger building a file on us. The car was a piece of the file. The confirmation was the piece he could not get from anywhere else. I tell every client now, if someone you do not know asks if you drive a specific car, the only correct answer is no. The only correct answer is no, even if you do. The only correct answer is always no. We bought a covered garage parking spot at the next multiplex we tried. 4 months later, we do not park in the open structure anymore.
For almost 2 years, it was the same multiplex, the same Tuesday late show, the same back row. Before the night, a man sat down in the row directly behind me in an otherwise empty theater. My name is Celine. I work 12-hour hospice shifts. Tuesday is my one day off. The 11 o'clock show at the multiplex by my apartment had become, by then, my own little ritual. Tuesday 11, large popcorn, back row, lights down. The film that night was a re-release of a movie from the early 90s, the kind of thing the chain shows once a quarter on a half-empty bill. I checked the seating chart on the app at home. 3 tickets sold, mine included. By the time the lights went down, I was the only one in the room. About 6 minutes into the trailers, I heard the door open. I assumed it was a late single. People come to the late show solo all the time. I did not turn around. The door clicked shut. I heard footsteps come up the slope of the aisle. The footsteps did not stop at any of the empty seats they passed. They came all the way up. They went past my row. They went up to the row directly behind mine. They stopped. I heard him sit down. The thing is, there were 136 other seats in that theater. 2 of them sold. He had picked the one behind me. Look, I am going to tell you exactly what I did, because I have been asked this. I did not turn around. I did not move. I kept my eyes on the screen. I told myself, very calmly, that he had picked his favorite row from habit, that this was a regular for him, that he had not even noticed me down in the row in front. About 12 minutes in, I heard him breathing. It was not loud. It was not labored. It was very close to the back of my head. The way it carries when someone leans forward in stadium seating and is maybe 8 inches away from the top of your scalp. I did the thing I had practiced in my head for years and never actually had to do. I took my phone out. I opened the Maps app. I tilted the screen so the brightness washed the row behind me in the reflection of the seat. The brightness lit up his face for about 1.5 seconds before I tilted the phone back. He had been looking down at me, not at the screen. I closed the phone. I held very still. I waited for the next moment when there was a sound effect from the speakers loud enough to cover the sound of me getting up. I got up at minute 15. I walked fast down the aisle. I did not run. I did not look back. I went to the door. I opened it. I went into the lobby. The manager at the counter, a woman, maybe my age, took one look at my face and walked around the popcorn station to meet me. She walked me to the security office. The office had a wall of monitors. We watched the playback together. The man behind me was visible. He had come in behind me by about 50 seconds, walked past every empty row to get to mine, sat in the seat directly behind me, and leaned forward in his seat starting at minute 8. He had stayed in that position for over 4 minutes before I lit him up with the phone. After I left, he had sat there for another 90 seconds. Then he got up, walked out, and left through the main lobby exit without picking up anything from concessions. The manager called the regional security number. The regional security person called the police. The police pulled the parking lot cameras. They got a plate. I did not stay for the rest. I called my brother. My brother drove 45 minutes from Mesa to meet me in the lobby. I rode home in his passenger seat with my own car keyed and parked at the multiplex overnight. I went back the next morning with him to get it. About a week later, the multiplex called. The man had been identified. He was a regular, not at our location, at 3 other locations of the same chain in the metro area. He bought tickets to late shows. He did not go to the films he bought tickets for. He went to the screening with the smallest sold seat count that night. He sat behind women who were alone. The chain banned him from all locations. The police told the multiplex he had no criminal history they could find. They told the manager they were watching him because of the pattern, not because of a crime. I asked the manager what I should do. She said, "Honestly, you did everything right. He doesn't have your name." I do not go to late shows alone anymore. I go on Saturday afternoons now with a friend. The film is worse. The crowd is louder. I do not mind.
It took me a full year of those 10:30 shows, the discount theater I started haunting after my divorce, to notice the same man kept sitting 3 rows behind me. My name's Dean. I do taxes for a living. My ex-wife got the house in the divorce, which was fair. And our daughter Maddie, who was 13 at the time, splits weeks between us. The weeks she is at her mother's, the apartment is frankly too quiet for me. The Tuesday and Thursday night 10:30, showing at the second-run multiplex in Oakland, became, by year 2, the place I went to not be home. There is a man at that theater I now know who is also there to not be home, but for very different reasons. I actually noticed him for the first time on a Thursday in March. The film was a re-release. The theater was maybe 6 people. He came in alone. He sat 3 rows behind me, slightly to the left. I did not register him. I was on my 3rd visit that week. I noticed him again the following Tuesday. Same theater, same film, by coincidence. Same 3 rows back, same general angle. The 3rd time was a Thursday, 2 weeks later, when I was at the theater for a completely different movie, and he was again 3 rows behind me. Let me back up. I did not at first think this was about me. The theater is a regular. Regulars repeat their preferences. I have a preferred row. I assumed he had his. What changed it was the phone. I am, like a lot of people my age, in the habit of checking my phone during the trailers. I had been texting Maddie that night. We had been going back and forth about a school project she was anxious about. The text thread had her photo at the top. I had glanced at it maybe 4 times while waiting for the film to start. The film ended. The lights came up. I stood. The man 3 rows back stood. He did not pick up trash. He did not stretch. He walked slowly toward the aisle. I went past the popcorn stand on the way to the lobby. He stopped me before I reached the door. He said, "Tell Maddie I hope the project went okay." I had never said my daughter's name out loud in the theater. I had not posted about Maddie's project online. He did not know me. He had never been introduced to me. He had read my phone 4 times over 4 visits from 3 rows back. I am not a brave man. I am an accountant. I went very still. I did not respond. I think I made some kind of stupid half smile and walked past him. I went to the manager's booth. I told the kid behind the glass that there was a man in the lobby who had just used my daughter's name, and I had never told him my daughter's name. I asked him to call security. The kid did. The security guard came. I described the man. The guard looked over my shoulder. The man was gone. The guard pulled the camera footage from the auditorium. He pulled the camera footage from the lobby. He pulled the camera footage from the parking lot. The man had walked through the lobby calmly while I was speaking with the kid, and had left through the front entrance and was already in his car by the time the guard had finished printing the still images. The plate came back eventually to a vehicle registered to a man with no criminal record, but who had, over the previous 3 years, accumulated more than 40 visits to that specific theater on a loyalty rewards card. The chain pulled his account. He was banned. He was, the police told me later, also a regular at 2 other locations. The police could not prosecute him for what he had done. Reading my phone from 3 rows back, even repeatedly, is not a crime. What I changed was the phone. I now keep the phone face down, always. In the theater, on the train, in the doctor's waiting room, at any restaurant where I do not personally know the people at the other tables. I told Maddie what happened. I told her in the calmest possible voice. I told her because if I had been hit by a car the next morning, I wanted her to know, to be careful about names and photos and the angle of a phone. She is 15 now. She tells her friends what I told her. I do not know if it helps. I assume it does, on the margin. Here's what I keep landing on. The man was not, the police told me, what they were calling a danger. He had no history. He had no priors. He was, by every available metric, a man with too much time and a habit of reading other people's phones. I do not believe metrics. I believe what I saw when he said my daughter's name. The look on his face was not the look of a man whose hobby is mildly antisocial. The look on his face was the look of a man who knew he was telling me something I had not consented to him knowing, and who wanted to see what my face did when he said it. He was watching me. He was not watching the film. He had been watching me for at least 3 Thursdays. That theater, I do not go to anymore. I go to a different chain now, one that has assigned seating, and I always pick a seat with no row directly behind it. The back row, the very last row. I check my phone in the bathroom or in the car, never in the seat. I lock my screen the second I sit down. I keep it in my coat pocket through the whole movie. I do not look at it again until I am back in the car with the doors locked. I miss the freedom of the old habit. I miss it the way you miss something somebody took from you without asking while you watched.
I'd been to 112 late shows alone in 2 years before I noticed him. Vera. I work nights in an emergency room in central Brooklyn. The schedule does what schedules at ERs do. I get out at, depending on the night, between 7 and 11 in the morning. I sleep until 5. I go to a late show. I get the popcorn. I sit in the back row, on the aisle, because I have spent a decade in scrubs, and I like being able to leave a room in under 3 seconds without asking permission. The theater I chose that night was an old single screen on the Upper West Side. I had been there 4 times before. I liked the building. The carpet pattern was original. There is, on the way to the auditorium, a hallway lined with framed posters from the chain's other locations going back to the 70s. It is a small museum. That night, I bought the ticket for a film I had been waiting to see, with maybe 15 other people in the room. I sat in my row. The preview started. A man came in late, after the lights went down. I heard the door open. I heard the usher whisper at him. I heard him say something soft back. He walked up the aisle. He stopped at my row. There were 8 empty seats in my row. There were dozens of empty seats around mine. He stepped into my row from the aisle side, walked past me, and sat in the seat directly next to mine. Picture the geometry. He was, in 2 steps, 3 feet from me. He did not move down the row. He sat next to me. He did not say, "Excuse me." He did not nod. He did not put a coat down. He just sat. I did not move. I have been in the ER long enough to know that the worst thing I could do in that moment was a sudden movement. He had no popcorn. He had no drink. He had no coat. He was wearing a thin windbreaker and dark pants. His hands were in his lap. I want to back up. I had read, 3 months before, an article about a man who had been entering theaters at this chain's locations after the lights went down, sitting next to lone women and leaving when they reacted or moved. The chain had put out a notice on their website. The notice did not name him. It said that staff had been instructed to escort him out if they recognized him on the way in. It said that if a patron found themselves in a situation that did not feel right, they should immediately use the lobby intercom buttons mounted in 2 locations on every floor. I had memorized the location of one of those intercom buttons in this exact theater. It was in the hallway with the framed posters, about 30 feet from my exit door. I sat for what felt like a long time, but was, by my watch, 90 seconds. Honestly, I had to be certain. I had to be sure that what I was thinking was not just me being paranoid because of an article. I looked, very briefly, at his hands. They were trembling. Not in a sick way. In the way a hand trembles when its owner is exerting a great deal of effort to hold it perfectly still. I stood up. I walked, calmly, past him into the aisle. He did not turn his head. I walked down the slope of the aisle to the door. I did not run. I pushed the door open. I went into the hallway. I went directly to the intercom. I hit the button. An older man's voice answered. I told him I was the woman in seat F11 of Auditorium 3, and I was reporting an unaccompanied male who had sat directly next to me in an otherwise empty row. He thanked me. He told me to stay where I was standing. Within 60 seconds, an off-duty officer who, the chain had hired part-time, came up the stairs from the lobby. He went into the auditorium with 2 ushers. The lights came up. The film paused. I watched it from the hallway, through the open door. The man was gone. He had left through the emergency exit at the front of the auditorium, the one that opens into a back alley. The off-duty officer came back. He took my statement. He thanked me 3 times for hitting the button. He said the chain had been chasing this man for, by his count, more than 4 months. He said, "We've had 11 reports. You're the 11th. Yours is the first one where the person hit the button instead of trying to leave the building first." He said, "The button gives us the front entrance and the alley." He almost always uses the alley. We had a unit at the alley side. The man was arrested at the corner of 72nd and Broadway, 8 minutes after I hit the button. He was, as the police later confirmed, the same man from all 11 previous reports. He had no prior arrests. He had a backpack with him at the time of his arrest. Inside the backpack was a length of zip tie, 2 pairs of latex gloves, and a small folded knife. The DA, in the case, charged him with attempted criminal restraint. The grand jury, the prosecutor told me, had not had to deliberate long. I want to tell you what I think about. More than the zip tie, more than the gloves. I think about the way his hands trembled. He had sat next to me. He had not said a word. He had done nothing observable. He had broken no law you could prosecute. The only thing he had done, when I looked at him for the 1.5 seconds I dared to look at him, was hold his hands very, very still. He had to. If he had not, his hands would have given him away. There were 111 other women in his pattern who had felt the same wrongness I had felt. 10 of them had handled it by getting up and leaving and putting it out of their minds. I am not better than they were. I had the article, fresh in my mind. I had the map of the intercom buttons. I had 10 years of triage that had taught me what panic actually looks like in someone else's body. I no longer go to that theater alone. I go on Sundays at noon with my mother, who flies up from Florida twice a month to see me. We get the popcorn. We sit in the back row. We do not leave early. I notice the intercom button every time I pass it in the hallway. I notice that I have not had to use it again.